Hello there, my name is Lovelust. Have you ever bought an eyeshadow palette and God, we're so excited to get it. You open it up and you're sitting there with your makeup brushes and you have your new palette and you're like, fuck, I really love this one color but nothing else. That's happened to me so much. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about how you can pick good eyeshadow palettes, what you want to look for when you're looking at the eyeshadow palette, either online or in someone's video, kind of what to look for in a good eyeshadow palette. If that sounds cool, keep watching. So I picked out a couple of eyeshadow palettes from my collection. I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes and I just wanted to briefly talk about a couple of them and what makes a good eyeshadow palette and what makes a bad eyeshadow palette. All of the eyeshadow palettes I'm talking about, you should be able to purchase, possibly with the exception of one. One of these palettes I believe was limited edition, but I think they came back out with it, but I do believe the formula is different. So we'll talk about that when we get there. So what makes you reach for a palette? For me personally, I love a bright, colorful, warm tone palette. I like reds, I like purples, I like things like that. I tend to prefer mattes over shimmers. Even today, I'm not wearing any shimmers except for my highlighter. I love a good highlighter, but I don't really reach for my shimmery shades. I don't have a lot of eye real estate for them, so it's just doesn't make sense for me. But when we're talking about a good eyeshadow palette, what does that look like? First, you need to decide what exactly you want to look like. What colors look good on you? What colors look bad on you? That'll be something that I can't really help you with. I don't know what you look like. But if you're reaching for an eyeshadow palette, this is the double exposure palette from Smashbox. Nice and shiny. This is a palette that I was given and it doesn't work for me. These are cool toned shadows. Even the black you can see, it's not necessary, it's like a gray black. It's not like a true black. I will use absolutely none of these shades in this palette. They're not my style. I don't like them. Over half the colors in here are way too cool. I mean, ashy, I guess. I was trying to think of a nicer word, but yeah. So this palette would look lovely on someone with lighter skin than me. So if you are pale, this would probably be a really great versatile palette for you. But for me, I could use the black, this shimmery shade, maybe these two, and that's it. I'm not touching anything else in here. And I do want to mention, this does look warmer in person than on the camera, but the fact remains of I will not touch any of these shades. They do nothing for me. They are for someone with pale skin. Despite this being an actual good laid out palette, you can see here, there's lots of really great shades in here that would work beautifully on someone with paler skin, but they don't work for me. So this is as far as I'm concerned, this is a palette that I could throw away, never touch, whatever, whereas someone else will get a lot of use out of that. So when you're reaching for a palette, make sure that it goes well with your skin tone, unless you're avant-garde and want to push it to the limit and be ashy as hell, whatever. So yeah, this was the Smashbox double exposure. I really like Smashbox as a brand, but when I tell you they give us nothing, I use their foundation and their primer sometimes, but they give us nothing all the time. It's so stressful. Another palette that I wouldn't recommend for a palette that you're reaching for to do your full face is a palette full of shimmers. This is kind of an exaggerated example, but you can see every single shade in here is shimmers. I can't use this. Like with the look I have on today, I could grab this shimmery black, put it on the middle of my lid, and that would be it. But I can't build a whole look out of this. I mean, I could, but I'd look frosty and crusty, and that's not really what I'm going for. This is the Revolution Foil Frenzy. By itself, it makes a good supplementary palette. If I was reaching for, say, maybe I was using the double exposure, and I was like, man, I want a shimmer, because there aren't too many shimmers in here. You have these satin finishes up here. This whole top row actually is like satin soft finishes. But they're not shimmer, they're not glitter, they're not boom, boom, bam, knocking down your front door. Have you heard the word? You know what I mean? So I would supplement with a palette like this, but this wouldn't be, if I'm trying to buy a makeup eyeshadow palette and I need something that'll work for my whole look, a bunch of different looks, I'm not reaching for this. So be careful of palettes with too much shimmer in them. Maybe not a palette like this where it's all shimmer, but a palette that has 1, 2 mattes and then 5 shimmers. Be careful of that, because if you're not using those mattes as good bases, they don't work for your skin tone. you're fucked. So I bet you're saying, what about a palette with just a whole bunch of colors? You can't go wrong, right? This is the color book by Revlon. This one is the third one. I mean, not Revlon, Revolution. They have 5 or 6 of these, and I want to pick up the other ones when I get a chance. I have this one, which is the orangey, yellowy, reddish one. It doesn't say like the range of colors, it just says 3. But if we open this up, you can see I have oranges, I have yellows, I have brights, I have darks, and I have the matching shimmer shade. So you're probably thinking to yourself, this is perfect, right? I can get my shimmers, I can get my brights, my lights. Depends on what you like, but this could definitely be what you're looking for. I would say this is one of the ones you would want to be careful about. Because this is all one tone, this one's a reddish orange. It looks very orange in here, but it's reddish orange. It's very easy to get a reddish orange and an orange blend, and then you find, well, it looks like I have one color on my eye. Unless you're more experienced with kind of matching your colors and things like that, I wouldn't recommend this as a standalone palette either. I do love this palette. I use it a lot actually, and I really love that there's matching shimmer shades for whatever looks I might be doing. I'm gonna flip this over so you can see the shimmers. But having said that, this wouldn't be the type of palette I would recommend for everyone. This is very situational. I actually bought this to use for people's faces. When I'm doing someone's face, I generally want a specific color. So things like this are really great for professional use and personal use as well. But I did want to mention, when you have a palette like this where half of it is shimmer, half of it is matte, and all the colors are very similar, this can blend into just a very similar looking eye look. You can see how I have a gradient on my eye. You won't get that with a palette like this unless you're using very precise colors, which when you have all these colors, it feels like a waste. So that would be something else I would recommend being careful of. I bet you're thinking, okay, we now know what not to do. What should we do? This is the Revolution Velvet Rose palette. I would say this is kind of a dupe for the Modern Renaissance. Kind of. The color story is really similar. It's not exact, but if you liked that kind of color story, this would be great for you. This would be a perfect complete palette. You can go light, you have your light colors, you have a white, you have a black, and you have lots of colors in between to give you a nice neutral look. If you want a pop of color, there's this nice golden shimmer up here, and then there's some more satin colors as well. There's a lot of variety in a palette like this, and you're not limited to using the same colors over and over. You have a nice dark brown down here, you have a nice light brown here, this one that looks kind of yellow. This is more of a light sand brown. There's variety here. Whereas with something that is like this, where it's just a bunch of very similar colors, you don't really have as much variety. You have similar tones all the way across. Of course, you do have this dark color that kind of saves it from being too similar, but compared to something like this, you can make a bigger variety of colors. I would still recommend this, but just something you want to be aware of before you buy. All right, so I bet you're thinking, okay, well, that's great. I'm not a huge lover of neutrals though. This is the Swear By It palette by NYX. The color story here is really nice. You have some cool tone shadows on this side. You have your warm tone shadows over here. You have a nice mix of different types of shadows. You have your golds, you have reds over here, purples, purple-esques, grays. This is a good palette if you want a lot of different colors to experiment and try them out. You still have some brighter tones in the yellows and the blues, but you're not stuck with your more neutral tones as well. So if you like the idea of this, but you want more pop of color, I would recommend something like this. I really love this palette. They still sell this one. It was on sale for like 30 bucks last month or so. NYX is gonna have a holiday sale soon anyway, so there's that. The last palette that I wanted to mention, this one's more of a warning than a recommendation. If you want something like this, bright colors, I wouldn't recommend buying this alone. I would recommend supplementing it with the Revolution Velvet Rose palette, where you have your more neutral tones and then you have your pops of color you can use. I did use this palette today. I used the soft purple there for my eyes and the black. but I still had to reach for other colors to complete the look the way I wanted it. This wouldn't be a palette I would recommend for people who want to just one and done it. This is the Sephora Pro Editorial Pro Pigment palette. So I'm not sure if they're even selling this anymore. This was the one I was telling you I wasn't sure that they are still selling and things like that. If you like bright colors, I would recommend picking up something like this, as long as you're not necessarily expecting to use every single color right away. But I do really love this eyeshadow palette, super pigmented, and I love it. So if Sephora is still selling that, highly recommend. I don't know if they are. All the other palettes I know you can still pick up, but yeah, that would be my tips for making sure you're picking out a good eyeshadow palette. I have a couple of other palettes I wanted to give honorable mentions to for not typical layouts. I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes in my collection, so bear with me. This is the other eyeshadow palette I used today, the Juvia's Place Warrior 3 palette. This would be what I would recommend if you can't get your hands on the Sephora Pro palette, but you still want a bunch of bright colors that you can really play around with. And these show up on my skin tone. As you can see, they show up, they show out. Love these. But yeah, this is the Warrior 3 palette by Juvia. It goes on sale all the time. Highly recommend picking that up. And if you're just like me and you love a bright eyeshadow palette, this is a bit older now, but this is the BH Cosmetics Take Me to Brazil palette. If you're just getting into color and you're not sure kind of how everything works, I would recommend picking up this palette. You have lots of brights. You have a black and a white, so you can really adjust the tones to what you're looking for. I would say the pigmentation isn't the best. I would definitely recommend more Juvia's Place over this particular palette, but if you just want to play with color and you don't want to spend a lot of money, I would recommend this Juvia's Place palette as well. Again, with bright palettes, they're very hard to use every day unless you're out there, you're bold with it. Because this is a great palette, it has 30 colors. I don't have like a base that I could use to just go. If I'm just running out the door and I need a quick eye makeup look, I'm not reaching for this. I'm not reaching for the Juvia's Place palette. I'm reaching for the Velvet Rose right here. Quick browns, golds, something I can slap on that will look great with my complexion, and I'm ready to go. And of course, if I need a pop of color or something else, I can reach for something else. But overall, that would be what I would recommend. I hope this was helpful for you. If you liked my makeup look for today, let me know. I will try to film it. I did record it already, and I don't hate my editor, so I'm not sending her that. It was a lot. It was a lot, and it was not cute. So yeah, that is my recommendation for how to pick out a good eyeshadow palette depending on what you're looking for. If you liked the video, please feel free to subscribe. You can like the video. If you didn't like it, feel free to hit the dislike button. That's what it's there for. And if you have any questions, I have a comment section right below. All the eyeshadow palettes I mentioned today will be in the description box below. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I've been Lovelust, and this has been Eyeshadow Palettes. Have a good day.